Chapter 26. The morning after the revelation hung heavy in the air, thick with the tension of unspoken words and shattered trust. Lillian could feel the weight of the world pressing down on her as she sat at the breakfast table, her mother's silence more telling than any outburst could have been. The clinking of silverware against porcelain resonated like a funeral dirge, each sound amplifying the chasm that had opened between them. Margaret's eyes were fixed on her coffee, the steam curling upward like the tendrils of a forgotten dream. Lillian wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap that had widened so painfully since Sarah's betrayal, but the fear of her mother's disappointment held her captive. The warmth of their once cherished bond felt distant, as if shrouded in fog. "Are you going to eat?" Margaret asked finally, her voice laced with a cool detachment that stung Lillian's heart. "I'm not hungry," Lillian replied, her own voice barely above a whisper. She pushed her plate aside, the uneaten food a stark reminder of her turmoil. Margaret sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. "You need to take care of yourself, Lillian. You can't just—" "Can't just what?" Lillian interrupted, her emotions bubbling to the surface. "Pretend that everything is fine? That I didn't just lose Ethan because of this mess?" "Ethan is not the issue here," Margaret said, her tone sharp. "It's the choices you make that have consequences, and this," she gestured between them, "this is the consequence of your secret." Lillian felt her heart race, anger flaring up within her. "So you think it's my fault? That I'm to blame for everything that's happened?" The accusation hung in the air, charged with the weight of their shared history. "I think we both have choices to make," Margaret replied, refusing to meet Lillian's gaze. "You can either choose to uphold the family's reputation or pursue a romance that could ruin us." Lillian's chest tightened. "What about my happiness? What about love? Doesn't that matter at all?" Margaret finally turned to her, her eyes flashing with a mix of frustration and concern. "Love is not enough to shield you from the judgment of others, Lillian. You must understand that." The words settled over Lillian like a dark cloud, suffocating and oppressive. How could her mother be so resolute, so willing to sacrifice her daughter's happiness for the sake of appearances? "You're asking me to choose between my happiness and your pride," she said, her voice trembling. "I am asking you to think of our family," Margaret shot back, her voice rising. "The consequences of your actions affect more than just you. They ripple through our lives, threatening everything we have built." Lillian rose from the table, her chair scraping against the floor with an unsettling screech. "I can't do this anymore, Mother. I can't pretend to be someone I'm not." With that, she stormed out of the room, her heart pounding in her chest. As she retreated to her room, Lillian felt a sense of loss wash over her. She could hardly believe how quickly everything had unraveled. Ethan had meant the world to her, and now, with her mother's ultimatum looming over her like a storm cloud, she felt utterly alone. Sitting on her bed, Lillian buried her face in her hands, the tears spilling over as her heart ached for the connection she had lost. Ethan had been her confidant, her solace, and now he was a specter of what could have been. The thought of facing him again, of explaining the chaos that had erupted because of her mother's fears, was nearly unbearable. But she knew she had to try. The love they shared was too precious to let slip away without a fight. Gathering her resolve, Lillian wiped her tears and resolved to find Ethan, to explain everything, to beg for his understanding. As she stepped into the sunlight, the warmth of the day contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside her. The streets felt foreign and daunting, and every passerby seemed to carry a judgmental gaze. What would they think of her? Would they whisper behind her back, speculate about the secret she had kept? The walk to Ethan's home felt like An eternity, each step heavy with the weight of her anxiety. She replayed their last moments together in her mind, the way his eyes had sparkled with love and mischief, now shadowed by confusion and hurt. She had to make him see that her heart still belonged to him, despite the chaos that surrounded them. When she finally reached his house, her breath quickened. She stood before the door, her hand poised to knock, but frozen in hesitation. What if he turned her away? What if he had already moved on, as Sarah's cruel words had suggested? With a deep breath, she rapped her knuckles against the door, the sound echoing in her chest like a drumbeat of hope and fear. Moments passed, each one stretching into eternity, until the door creaked open, revealing Ethan's concerned face. "Lillian," he breathed, his expression a mixture of surprise and relief. "I was hoping you would come." "I need to talk to you," she said, the urgency in her voice evident. "Can we go somewhere private?" "Of course," he replied, stepping aside to let her in. The familiar warmth of his home enveloped her, but the atmosphere felt charged, fraught with unspoken words. They moved into the living room, where the air was thick with tension. "Lillian, I don't understand what's happening," Ethan said, his brow furrowed. "You've been distant, and then Sarah—" "Sarah is the problem," Lillian interrupted, her voice rising. "She twisted everything, Ethan. She made it sound like I was hiding something terrible when all I was trying to do was protect us." "Protect us?" Ethan echoed, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You mean protect yourself from your mother's wrath?" Lillian felt a pang of guilt. "I thought I could manage it, but it spiraled out of control. I never wanted you to be hurt by all of this." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his posture. "Well, it's too late for that. Sarah's words have already done their damage. Everyone is talking—" "I don't care what everyone is saying," Lillian exclaimed, stepping closer to him, her heart racing. "I care about you. I love you, Ethan. Can't you see that?" His expression softened for a moment, but the tension remained palpable. "But what does that mean for us? Your mother—" "Forget my mother. She thinks she can control my life, but I won't let her." Lillian's voice cracked with emotion. "I want to be with you, but I'm terrified of what might happen." Ethan's gaze pierced through her, searching for the truth in her words. "Do you truly mean that? Because if we're going to fight this, we have to be all in. I can't be your secret anymore." Lillian felt a rush of hope surge within her. "I'm ready to be honest. With you, with my mother, everyone. I want us to be free of this burden." "Then we need to confront your mother together," Ethan said, his voice steady. "We can't live in the shadows anymore." The thought of facing her mother filled Lillian with dread, but she knew it was the only way forward. "You're right. We can't keep running away from this. I'll talk to her tonight." Ethan stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Whatever happens, I'm here for you. We'll face this together." In that moment, Lillian felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. With Ethan by her side, she could confront the chaos that had engulfed her life. "Thank you," she whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude. As they stood together, the weight of their love felt like a shield against the storm that threatened to engulf them. Lillian knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she was ready to embrace the fight. "Let's go together," Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. "We'll take this step together, side by side." Hand in hand, they stepped out into the world, ready to face the fallout of their choices. Love may have brought them together, but it was their courage that would determine their future, and as they walked toward the unknown, Lillian felt a renewed sense of purpose. No longer would they be shackled by secrets. They would forge their own path, together, come what may. Chapter 27. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm glow over the garden where Lillian often found solace. Today, however, the beauty of the natural world felt like a mockery of her internal chaos. The air was thick with unspoken words, each breath a reminder of the heartache that loomed over her like an unrelenting storm. Ethan had asked her to meet him beneath the sprawling oak tree, a place where they had shared laughter and dreams, a sanctuary now tainted by uncertainty. As she approached, Lillian felt her heart quicken, a tumult of fear and anticipation bubbling within her. The weight of her secrecy hung heavily on her shoulders, and she knew the moment of reckoning had come. Ethan stood with his back to her, hands shoved deep into his pockets. He was a silhouette against the waning light, and Lillian could sense the tension radiating from him even before he turned to face her. His expression was a mixture of concern and anger, and Lillian's heart sank at the sight. "Lillian," he began, his voice steady but laced with an edge of urgency, "we need to talk." "Ethan, she started, but he raised a hand, cutting her off. "Please, let me speak. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. You've been distant, and I can't help but feel it's because of me. What's happening between us?" The intensity of his gaze felt like a spotlight, illuminating the shadows of her heart. Lillian swallowed hard, the truth swirling in her mind like a tempest. "I didn't mean to pull away," she said softly, her voice trembling. "It's just, so much has happened." "So much?" Ethan echoed, frustration creeping into his tone. "So much has happened. Yet you choose silence over honesty. I can see it in your eyes, Lillian. You're hiding something from me." The accusation hit her like a blow, and she recoiled instinctively. "I'm not trying to hide anything, Ethan. I'm trying to figure things out." "Figure what out?" he pressed, stepping closer. "Is it about your mother, or is it about us?" Lillian's mind raced. How could she explain the labyrinth of emotions that had ensnared her? How could she articulate the fear of losing him, the loyalty to her mother, the love that felt both exhilarating and forbidden? "It's complicated," she murmured, her heart aching at the thought of dragging him into the turmoil of her family's secrets. "Complicated?" Ethan repeated, his voice rising. "It shouldn't be complicated. I love you, Lillian. I thought you loved me too." The words hung in the air, their weight palpable. Lillian felt a surge of emotion wash over her, a mixture of love and sorrow. "I do love you, Ethan, more than I can say. But my mother, she has her reasons for wanting to keep this bond between us a secret." "Reasons?" Ethan's voice dripped with skepticism. "What reasons could possibly justify keeping us apart? Why can't we be together openly? Why can't we just be honest?" "I'm scared," Lillian cried out, her voice breaking. "I'm scared of what my mother will do if she finds out how I feel about you, scared of the consequences that could tear our family apart." Ethan's expression softened momentarily, but the hurt in his eyes remained. "You think I'm just going to walk away because of your mother? Because of what she thinks?" "It's not just that," Lillian insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. "It's about everything. Our families, the lies, the expectations. Do you think I want to hide? I want to be with you, but I don't know how to make that happen without hurting the people I care about." Ethan's face hardened, his frustration morphing into something resembling betrayal. "So you'd rather keep lying? You'd rather let that lie fester and grow until it consumes us both? Is that what you want?" "No, that's not what I want," Lillian exclaimed, tears brimming in her eyes. "I want to be free, to love you without fear, but I can't just ignore the reality of my situation." "Then we need to confront that reality together," Ethan said, his tone firm. "We can't keep living in the shadows. If we want a future, we have to be honest with ourselves and with your mother." The gravity of his words sank deep into Lillian's heart, stirring a mix of resolve and dread. "You're right," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't keep running. But what if she reacts badly? What if she tries to tear us apart?" "Then we stand together," Ethan replied, his eyes blazing with determination. "We face her, and we face the truth. I won't let her dictate our lives anymore." Lillian felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. His unwavering conviction was a balm to her fears. "You really mean that?" she asked, searching his face for reassurance. "Absolutely," he said, stepping closer, his hand reaching for hers. "I love you, Lillian. I believe in us. Whatever it takes, I'm willing to fight for it." Tears slipped down Lillian's cheeks, a release of the pent-up anxiety that had suffocated her for far too long. "I love you too, Ethan. I want us to be happy. I want to be brave." Ethan squeezed her hand, his grip warm and reassuring. "Then, let's be brave together. We'll talk to your mother tonight. No more secrets, no more lies." As they stood together beneath the ancient oak, Lillian felt the weight of the world shift slightly. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but with Ethan by her side, she felt ready to navigate the tumultuous waters of family loyalty and love. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the garden, a reminder of the day's fading light. But within Lillian's heart, a new dawn began to break, filled with the promise of honesty and the hope of a future unburdened by secrets. That evening, as the shadows deepened and the stars began to twinkle in the vast expanse above, Lillian and Ethan prepared to face the storm that awaited them in the confines of her home. The air was thick with anticipation, a charged atmosphere that seemed to echo their racing hearts. Lillian led the way into the house, her heart pounding with each step. The familiar surroundings felt foreign now, the walls echoing with the weight of the secrets that had resided within them for too long. She found her mother in the sitting room, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating her features, casting a halo of light around her. "Lillian, you're home," Margaret said, her voice warm but tinged with an edge of concern as she looked up from her book. "Did you have a nice day?" "It was enlightening," Lillian replied, her voice steady despite the turbulence within. She exchanged a glance with Ethan, who stood just behind her, his presence a reassuring anchor. "Mother, there's something we need to discuss," Lillian said, her heart racing. "It's important." Margaret's brow furrowed slightly, her expression shifting from warmth to wariness. "What is it, dear?" William took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. "It's about Ethan and me. We need to be honest about our relationship." Margaret's eyes widened, the color draining from her face. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight. "We are not just step-siblings," Lillian continued, her voice trembling but resolute. "We love each other, and we can't keep hiding it. This secret is tearing us apart, and I can't do it anymore." Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. "Margaret, we understand the complications, but Lillian and I want to be together openly. We believe in our love despite the challenges." The silence that followed was deafening. Lillian's heart raced as she watched her mother's expression shift from shock to something more complex. Fear, anger, and perhaps a hint of betrayal. "You can't be serious," Margaret said, her voice low and incredulous. "This is not just a childish crush. You're family. This isn't how things are done." "Mother," Lillian pleaded, her voice breaking, "we may be family by circumstance, but our feelings are real. Hiding it is only causing more pain. I love him. How can you not see that?" Margaret's eyes narrowed, her expression hardening. "Love is not enough, Lillian. You must think of the consequences. People will talk. It will ruin us." "Ruin us?" Ethan interjected, anger simmering beneath the surface. "What about Lillian's happiness? What about her right to choose who she loves? You can't prioritize your reputation over her life." The tension in the room crackled like electricity, and Lillian felt the weight of the moment pressing down upon her. She had never seen her mother so fierce, nor had she expected Ethan to stand up so boldly. "Enough!" Margaret's voice rose, echoing off the walls. "You don't understand the weight of this decision. You're both so young. This is not a game." "It's not a game to us," Lillian shouted back, her own frustration boiling over. "I've spent too long living in fear of what you might think. I won't let you make my decisions for me anymore." Silence enveloped them, the air thick with unsaid words. Margaret's gaze flickered between her daughter and Ethan, a battle raging behind her eyes. "You think you can just walk away from the life I've built for you? You think love conquers all? You secretly hope to spend more time with your family rather than with us?" "I think love deserves a chance," Ethan replied, his voice steady. "We're asking you to accept us, not to destroy what you've built, but to adapt to a new reality." The room fell silent again, the gravity of their words hanging in the air. Lillian's heart raced as she searched her mother's face for some sign of understanding, some indication that love could bridge the chasm that had formed between them. Margaret's expression softened, if only slightly. "You don't understand the implications, Lillian. This could change everything." "Perhaps it's time for a change," Lillian replied, her voice quieter now but filled with determination. "I want to live my life authentically, not hidden away in the shadows of your expectations." Margaret's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a moment Lillian saw a glimpse of the woman who had raised her, the woman who had once embraced her dreams. "You're my daughter," she said softly, a tremor in her voice. "I just want to protect you." "And I want to be free," Lillian responded, her heart aching with love for the woman who had shaped her. "Free to love, to choose, and to be myself." The silence stretched on, heavy with the weight of the decision that hung in the balance. Lillian felt her heart pounding in her chest, each beat echoing her hope for understanding, for acceptance. She reached out, holding her mother's gaze, willing her to see the truth in her words. Finally, Margaret sighed deeply, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "I can't promise to understand right away," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I will try." Lillian felt a rush of relief wash over her, and she stepped forward, wrapping her arms around her mother. "Thank you," she murmured, emotions spilling over. "I love you, and I hope you can find it in your heart to accept us." As they embraced, Lillian felt the warmth of her mother's love enveloping her, a fragile bridge beginning to form between them. Ethan stood nearby, a silent witness to the emotional exchange, his heart swelling with hope. "Let's take it one step at a time," Margaret said, pulling back to look at her daughter, her eyes softening. "We'll figure this out together." In that moment, Lillian felt the weight of her fears lift slightly. Though the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, she was no longer alone. Together with Ethan and her mother, they would navigate the complexities of their newfound reality, embracing love while acknowledging the intricacies of family. As they stood together, a sense of hope blossomed, a fragile yet resilient thread of connection weaving through the fabric of their lives. They would face the world together, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead, united by love and the courage to be true to themselves. Chapter 28. In the tender twilight that enveloped the garden, Lillian stood before Ethan, her heart a cacophony of dread and yearning. The air shimmered with unspoken words, each one a fragile thread that could either bind them together or tear them apart. She had resolved to unveil the truth, to lay bare the secrets that had woven a web of deception around their love. But the thought of Ethan's reaction filled her with deep horror. "Please, Lillian," Ethan urged, his voice a mixture of impatience and concern. "I need to know what's going on in your heart. You've kept me at arm's length for too long." Taking a deep breath, she felt the weight of her decision pressing down upon her. Ethan, there's something I've been hiding. Something that could change everything between us." The words trembled on her lips, but they felt like a necessary release, a dam breaking under the pressure of the flood waters. His expression shifted, the warmth in his eyes replaced by a flicker of apprehension. "What is it?" Lillian's mind raced, grappling with the enormity of her confession. "You know, my mother has always insisted that we maintain a certain appearance, especially since she married Tom. But it's more than just that. There's a reason she's kept our connection a secret." Ethan's brow furrowed, confusion mingling with concern. "What do you mean?" A sense of urgency surged within her. "I overheard a conversation between my mother and Tom just before our relationship began to change. They spoke of me, of you, and the implications of what we were becoming. They are deeply afraid of what our love could mean, not just for us, but for them." "What implications?" he pressed, frustration lacing his voice. "Lillian, you're not making sense. Just tell me." "My mother, she's not just my mother. She's my guardian, my protector, and she's terrified that if the truth about our relationship comes out, it could ruin everything. There's a history, Ethan, a past that I've only begun to understand." Ethan took a step closer, the tension between them palpable. "What past? What is it you're not telling me?" "Ethan, I'm not just your friend," Lillian said, her voice rising with emotion. "I'm also your half-sister." The revelation hung in the air, a heavy truth that shattered the fragile silence surrounding them. For a moment, time stood still. Ethan's eyes widened as the words sank in, disbelief etched across his features. No, that can't be. You're joking, right?" "I wish I were," Lillian replied, tears welling in her eyes. "But it's the truth. My mother had a relationship before she met your father. I didn't know until recently, but I can't hide it from you any longer." Ethan stepped back, his expression a whirlwind of shock and betrayal. "You've known this whole time, and you didn't tell me?" "I didn't know how," Lillian cried, desperation clawing at her throat. "I was afraid of how you would react, afraid of losing you. I thought I could protect us both by keeping it a secret." "Protect us?" he echoed, his voice strained. "You've done the opposite. You've kept me in the dark while I fell in love with you, and now I find out that we're siblings." "I didn't want it to be like this," she pleaded, her heart aching at the sight of his pain. "I love you, Ethan. That hasn't changed, but I had to tell you I couldn't keep lying." Ethan turned away, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "You should have told me sooner, Lillian. You've put us both in an impossible situation." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "But I thought we could find a way to be together without revealing the truth. I thought I could shield you from my mother's wrath." "Shielding me?" His voice rose with a mix of anger and sorrow. "You've only made things worse. How can we ever be together now? How can I trust anything you say?" The sharpness of his words pierced her like shards of glass. She stepped forward, desperate to bridge the chasm that had suddenly opened between them. "Ethan, please. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now that I was wrong." He turned to face her, anguish etched across his handsome features. "You've shattered my world, Lillian. Everything we had, every moment we shared, it feels like a lie now." "It's not a lie. I love you, and that's real," she cried, tears cascading down her cheeks. "The past doesn't change how I feel about you. We can still be together if we fight for it." Ethan shook his head, his expression resolute yet filled with pain. "I don't know if I can. Not after this. I need time to think, to process. You've turned my whole life upside down." As he spoke, Lillian felt the ground shift beneath her. The reality of their situation crashed over her like a tidal wave, dragging her into a sea of despair. "Ethan, don't do this. Please. I can't lose you now." "Maybe it's too late for that," he replied, his voice colder than she had ever heard it. He stepped back, creating a physical distance that mirrored the emotional chasm between them. "I need to be alone." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Lillian standing beneath the oak tree, her heart shattering into a million pieces. The warmth of the day faded into the chill of dusk, and the shadows lengthened around her, echoing the darkness that loomed within. Lillian sank to the ground, her body trembling as the weight of her decisions crashed down around her. She had wanted to protect their love, to shield Ethan from the burden of her family's secrets, but in doing so, she had only succeeded in fracturing the very foundation of their relationship. The world felt unbearably heavy, each breath a reminder of the loss she now faced. She had confessed her truth, only to discover that honesty could sometimes be more destructive than deception. The love she had cherished so dearly now seemed tainted by the very blood that connected them. As night fell, Lillian remained rooted to the spot, her heart aching with the finality of their confrontation. She had revealed her deepest secret, only to find that the truth had driven them apart. The path ahead felt impossibly dark, and the future she had envisioned with Ethan slipped further from her grasp. The stars began to twinkle in the night sky, distant and indifferent, as Lillian grappled with the reality of her choices. The weight of her family's legacy loomed large, and the secrets she had hoped to escape now wrapped around her like chains, binding her to a fate she had never desired. In that moment of solitude, Lillian understood the fragility of love, the complexities of family ties, and the harsh reality of truth. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, and she would have to navigate the treacherous waters of love and loyalty, forever changed by the revelations of this fateful evening. Chapter 29. The dawn broke over the horizon, spilling golden light into Lillian's room, yet the brightness felt like a cruel joke against the turmoil that raged within her heart. She lay tangled in her sheets, the remnants of a sleepless night clawing at her eyelids, memories of Ethan's shock and pain haunting her thoughts. The truth had spilled forth, raw and unadulterated, yet it had only served to deepen the chasm between them. As she sat up, the weight of her confession bore down upon her. The reality of their relationship, one that had blossomed into love, now tarnished by the revelation of their shared blood, gnawed at her insides. She had wanted to protect their love, but in revealing the truth, she had done the opposite. The silence that followed that fateful moment felt like an echoing void, amplifying all the things left unsaid. Lillian's mother, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, knocked gently on her door. "Lillian, dear, may I come in?" Her voice was tentative, laced with an anxiety that mirrored Lillian's own. "Of course, Mother," Lillian replied, her voice hoarse, like a whisper carried on a weary breeze. As her mother entered, Lillian braced herself for the inevitable confrontation. She could feel the tension crackling between them, an unspoken acknowledgement of the chaos that had erupted within their family. Her mother's brow was furrowed, worry etched across her features. "Lillian, her mother began, but the words faltered as she took in her daughter's disheveled appearance. "You look so pale. Have you eaten anything?" "I'm not hungry, Mother," Lillian replied, her tone sharper than she intended. "We need to talk about what happened." "Indeed we do," her mother said, her voice trembling slightly. "Are you all right, Ethan? He left so abruptly." Lillian felt a surge of anger at the mention of his name, a reminder of the rift that had opened between them. How could you let it come to this? You knew all along, didn't you? You knew what I was to him. "I did," her mother admitted, her gaze dropping to the floor. "But I thought that by keeping it hidden, I was protecting you both. I never imagined it would come to this." "Protecting us?" Lillian scoffed, her voice rising. "You've torn us apart. How could you think that lying would keep us safe?" Her mother's face was a mask of sorrow, tears pooling in her eyes. "I made a mistake, Lillian. I thought if I could keep you both from the pain of the truth, I could shield you. But I see now how wrong I was." Lillian's heart ached at the sight of her mother's anguish, yet the weight of betrayal still pressed heavily upon her. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me the truth. I could have handled it." "Could you?" her mother countered gently. "Could you have handled the knowledge that the man you loved was also your brother? It was a burden I wished to spare you from." "Yet here we are," Lillian said, her voice breaking. "You've put me in a position where I have lost him, lost the love I thought would last forever." The room fell silent, the air thick with grief. Lillian's mother stepped closer, her hand reaching out as if to bridge the distance between them. "Lillian, please understand. I thought I was protecting you. I thought that if you could live your life without this knowledge, you would be happier." "Happy?" Lillian echoed, bitterness creeping into her tone. "I'm not happy, Mother. I feel betrayed. I feel lost." "Then let's talk this through," her mother said, desperation edging her voice. "We can find a way to mend this. We can talk to Ethan. Explain everything." "Explain what?" Lillian snapped, frustration boiling over. "That we're both trapped in a web of lies? That I've lost him because of your choices?" "I didn't mean for this to happen," her mother pleaded, her voice cracking. "I wanted to give you a chance at happiness." "You've stolen my chance," Lillian shot back, her heart racing. "You kept me in the dark while I fell in love with my brother, and now you want to fix it with words? It's too late for that." The fight fizzled into a painful silence, both women caught in the aftermath of choices that had spiraled beyond their control. Lillian's heart felt heavy, a leaden weight that echoed the loss of her love, her future, a future that had seemed so bright just days before. "Please," her mother whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Don't shut me out. I love you, Lillian. I want to help you through this." Lillian's resolve began to waver, the ache in her mother's eyes stirring a flicker of compassion within her. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now," she admitted, her voice softer. "Everything feels so broken." "I understand," her mother said, taking a step back, giving Lillian room to breathe. "But I am here no matter what. We will face this together, I promise." As the morning light filtered into the room, Lillian felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She needed to see Ethan, needed to confront the reality of what had happened. "I can't stay here," she said finally. "I need to go find him." "Lillian, please," her mother began, but Lillian interrupted. "I need to talk to him. I need to know if there's anything left between us." With that, she slipped past her mother, her heart pounding with both hope and dread. The world outside was vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. Lillian walked through the familiar streets, each step heavy with uncertainty. She could feel the eyes of the world upon her, judgmental and harsh, as if they could sense the secrets she carried. Arriving at Ethan's home, Lillian hesitated before knocking on the door. The reality of what she was about to face loomed large in her mind. What if he refused to see her? What if he couldn't forgive her for the truth she had revealed? But with a deep breath, she rapped her knuckles against the wood, the sound echoing in the stillness. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing Ethan, his expression a mixture of surprise and guarded pain. "Lillian," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan," she replied, her heart racing. "Can we talk?" "You shouldn't be here," he said, stepping back as if to create distance between them, a physical manifestation of the emotional chasm that had opened up. I thought you'd need time." "I do need time," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I also need to explain. I can't leave things like this." Ethan hesitated, his eyes searching hers for answers, for a flicker of hope amidst the despair. "What's there to explain? You told me the truth, and now everything is different." "It's different, but it doesn't have to be over," Lillian pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "Please, just hear me out." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, the gesture revealing the turmoil within. "All right, but I don't know what more there is to say." She took a step closer, her heart pounding. "I love you, Ethan. That hasn't changed. The fact that we're related complicates things, yes, but it doesn't erase what we had." Ethan's gaze flickered to the ground, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. "You say that, but how can we move forward? How can I trust you after this?" "Trust can be rebuilt," she said, her voice steadier now, fueled by a flicker of hope. "We can find a way to navigate this, to understand what it means for both of us. I don't want to lose you." For a moment, silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating. Lillian held her breath, praying for a glimmer of understanding in Ethan's eyes. Finally, he looked up, his expression softening ever so slightly. "I wish it were that simple," he murmured. "But we're not just two people in love anymore. There are layers, complications, and the past—" "I know," she replied, her heart aching at the thought of their lost future. "But I believe we can face it together. I can't change what happened, but I can promise to be honest with you moving forward. No more secrets." Ethan's expression faltered, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through his guarded demeanor. "I don't want to be angry with you. I want to understand. But it hurts, Lillian. It hurts to know that I've been in love with my sister." "I can't change the past," she said, her voice breaking. "But I can try to make sense of it with you. I want to be with you, Ethan. I want to fight for us." He studied her for a long moment, the silence stretching between them like a taut wire. "What if it's too late?" he finally whispered, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Then we'll find a way to heal," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But I need you to try. I need you to believe that we can still have something beautiful, even in the midst of this chaos." Ethan's gaze softened as he reached out, brushing his thumb against her cheek, catching a tear. "You're asking for a lot, Lillian. But maybe we can start with understanding. Maybe we can take it one day at a time." Lillian's heart soared with hope, the warmth of his touch igniting something deep within her. "That's all I ask," she whispered, a fragile smile breaking through her tears. "One day at a time." As they stood there, the world around them faded into a blur, leaving only the two of them, entwined in a fragile moment of connection. They had faced the darkness together, and though the path ahead was uncertain, they were willing to take the first steps toward healing, toward rebuilding what had been broken. In that moment, Lillian understood that love was not merely a feeling, it was a choice, a commitment to navigate the complexities of life together, and as they stood side by side, hearts laid bare, she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, a promise of new beginnings, amidst the aftermath of their truth. Chapter 30. In the quietude of dawn, where shadows still clung to the corners of Lillian's room, she found herself adrift in a sea of sorrow. The weight of her choices pressed heavily upon her chest, each breath a reminder of the love she had lost and the pain that now filled the void. Ethan's startled gaze haunted her thoughts, a flicker of betrayal that had seared itself into her memory, branding her with the truth of their fractured bond. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow upon her disheveled bed, yet the light felt cold and distant, an echo of the warmth she once felt in Ethan's presence. She could almost hear his laughter, the way it danced through the air like music, now replaced by a silence that echoed too loudly in her heart. Lillian rose from her bed, her movements mechanical, as if the very act of living had become a chore. She wandered to the window, peering out at the world beyond, a world that continued to spin, indifferent to her turmoil. The streets were alive with the bustle of morning, but in her heart, time stood still, caught in the throes of heartache. "Lillian!" Her mother's voice broke through the haze of her thoughts, calling from the hallway. "Are you all right?" The question felt like a dagger, piercing through her numbness. "I'm fine," she replied, though the words felt hollow, devoid of the truth she longed to share. "May I come in?" her mother asked, the hesitation in her voice betraying her concern. "Sure," Lillian said, though she wished to be left alone, cocooned in her grief. The door creaked open, revealing her mother's worried face, eyes filled with a mixture of love and guilt. "Oh, Lillian," her mother breathed, stepping closer. "I'm so sorry for what happened. I never wanted this for you." Lillian turned away, unable to face the sadness mirrored in her mother's eyes. "You didn't want this, but you allowed it to happen. You kept me in the dark, and for what? To protect me from the truth." "I thought it would be better," her mother started, but faltered under the weight of Lillian's gaze. "I thought you could find happiness without knowing." "Happiness?" Lillian scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "You call this happiness? I've lost him, Mother. I've lost everything." "Please, let me help you," her mother implored, stepping forward. "We can talk about it. We can try to make sense of it together." But what was there to make sense of? The truth had unraveled their lives, and no amount of talking could stitch it back together. "How can we talk when the very foundation of our lives is built on lies?" Lillian replied, her voice trembling. Her mother's face fell, and Lillian felt a pang of sympathy for the woman who had fought so hard to protect her. "I never meant to hurt you, Lillian. I thought you were doing what was best for me," Lillian interrupted, her heart aching. "But you weren't. You were protecting yourself, hiding your own mistakes behind my happiness." Silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Lillian could see the tears shimmering in her mother's eyes, and for a moment she felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crack. "I just don't know how to fix this," her mother whispered. "Neither do I," Lillian admitted, her voice softening. "I don't know if it can be fixed." With those words, the dam broke. Tears flowed freely down Lillian's cheeks, each drop a release of the pent-up anguish that had consumed her. Her mother stepped forward, wrapping her arms around her daughter, holding her tightly as Lillian surrendered to the storm of emotions. "I'm here, Lillian, I'm here," her mother murmured, her voice soothing yet weighted with regret. "We'll find a way through this, I promise." But the comfort of her mother's embrace felt fleeting, a temporary balm against the heartache that lingered. As Lillian pulled away, she wiped her tears with the back of her hand, feeling the rawness of her grief. "I need to be alone for a while," Lillian said, her voice hoarse. "I don't even know what I'm feeling right now." Her mother nodded, the understanding in her gaze a flicker of hope amidst the despair. "I'll be in the other room if you need me." Once her mother left, Lillian sank onto her bed, the weight of her sorrow crashing down around her. Memories of Ethan flooded her mind, his smile, the way his eyes sparkled with mischief, the warmth of his laughter. Each recollection felt like a knife twisting in her heart, a reminder of what had been and what could never be. Days passed in a blur, the world outside continuing to move, while Lillian remained ensnared in her grief. She avoided family gatherings, retreating into solitude, where the silence was both a sanctuary and a torment. As her mother busied herself with household tasks, Lillian often found herself lost in thought, grappling with the reality of her loss. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue across her room, Lillian felt a stirring in her heart, a flicker of determination amidst the sorrow. She could not remain trapped in this cycle of despair. If she had lost Ethan, then perhaps it was time to confront the truth of her own heart, to understand the depth of her feelings and the weight of her decisions. With a newfound resolve, Lillian took out her journal, the pages blank and inviting. She began to write, pouring her heart onto the paper, letting the words flow like a river of emotion. She wrote about her love for Ethan, the joy he brought into her life, the way he made her feel seen and cherished, and the profound heartache that came with the revelation of their shared blood. As she wrote, Lillian felt a sense of catharsis, a release of the pent-up emotions that had threatened to consume her. She wrote of her confusion, her anger, and ultimately her longing for a resolution. With each stroke of her pen, she began to untangle the complex web of her feelings, seeking clarity amidst the chaos. Yet, even as she wrote, a part of her grappled with the fear of what lay ahead. What if she reached out to Ethan and found that he had moved on? What if the love they once shared had been irrevocably altered by the truth? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but she knew she could not remain paralyzed by fear any longer. The following day, as the sun rose anew, Lillian made a decision. She would seek out Ethan, not to rekindle what had been lost, but to confront the truth of their situation together. She needed to know if there was still a flicker of hope left between them, if they could navigate the complexities of their relationship in the light of honesty. With her heart racing, she made her way to Ethan's house, each step filled with trepidation. The familiar path felt foreign, each detail amplified by her anxiety. As she approached the door, she paused, her breath hitching in her throat. What if he didn't want to see her? What if he had closed the door on their relationship for good? But she could not turn back now. With a deep breath, she knocked, the sound echoing in the stillness. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing Ethan, his expression a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. "Lillian?" he said, his voice tentative, as if testing the waters of their fractured bond. "Ethan, can we talk?" she asked, her heart pounding. He hesitated, his gaze searching hers for answers. "I don't know if I'm ready for this." "I'm not asking for everything to be fixed right away," she said, her voice steady despite the turbulence within her. "But I need to understand. I need to know if there's still something between us." He stepped back, allowing her to enter, and as Lillian crossed the threshold, she felt the weight of their shared history, the memories that lingered in the air like ghosts. They settled into an uneasy silence, both grappling with the enormity of what had transpired. "I miss you," Lillian finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I miss us." Ethan's eyes softened for a moment, and then the shadows of doubt returned. Do you really think we can go back to how things were, knowing what we know now?" "I don't want to go back," she replied, her heart urging her to be honest. "I want to find a way forward. I want to understand what this means for us." He looked away, his expression pained, as if her words had struck a nerve. "Lillian, you have to understand. I'm scared. Scared of what this means for us. Scared of what we could lose." "I'm scared too," she confessed, her voice trembling. "But I believe we can face this together. We just need to be honest with each other." Ethan nodded slowly, the tension in the air palpable. "I don't want to lose you, but it changes everything." "I know," she whispered, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "But I can't bear the thought of losing you for good. Can we try to figure this out together?" The silence stretched between them, heavy with uncertainty. But for the first time since their lives had been upended, Lillian felt a flicker of hope, a glimmer of possibility amidst the darkness. "I don't know what the future holds," Ethan said finally, his voice low and earnest. "But I'm willing to try. I don't want to walk away from what we have." Lillian's heart swelled with emotion, the weight of their shared pain beginning to lift. "Then, let's take it one step at a time. We'll face the truth together, no matter how difficult it may be." As they stood there, the sun streaming through the window, illuminating the space between them, Lillian felt a sense of release, a promise of healing, of understanding, and perhaps of love that could withstand the trials ahead. Together, they would navigate the complexities of their relationship, forging a new path built on honesty and trust. In that moment, she knew that heartbreak could give way to something more profound, a deeper connection born not just from love, but from the willingness to confront the truth, no matter how painful it may be. And as they took their first tentative steps toward reconciliation, Lillian felt a surge of determination within her, a belief that, even amidst the darkest moments, love could find a way to shine through. Chapter 31. In the wake of the tempest that had swept through Lillian's heart and home, a fragile stillness settled over the household. The echoes of truth, though painful, had begun to weave a new tapestry of understanding, one that Lillian hoped would mend the rips caused by secrets long kept. She stood at the threshold of her mother's room, the weight of their recent confrontation heavy upon her shoulders. The air felt thick with unspoken words, memories of their shared laughter now tainted by the shadows of betrayal. Yet Lillian's heart beat with a flicker of hope, a desire to bridge the chasm that had formed between them. With a deep breath, she knocked softly on the door, a hesitant invitation into the sanctuary of her mother's grief. "Come in," came the soft reply, tinged with sadness. As Lillian entered, she found her mother seated on the edge of her bed, her gaze distant, lost in a reverie that seemed to stretch beyond the confines of their small room. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow that illuminated the traces of worry etched on her mother's face. "Mother," Lillian began, her voice quavering slightly, "can we talk?" Her mother turned slowly, her eyes meeting Lillian's with a mixture of sorrow and longing. "Of course, dear. I've been waiting for you." Lillian took a seat beside her, the distance between them a tangible reminder of the rift that had formed. "I've been thinking," she started, her heart racing as the words tumbled forth, "about everything that's happened, about the lies and the truths that have torn us apart." Her mother nodded, the weight of regret hanging heavily in the air. "I never meant for it to come to this, Lillian. I thought I was protecting you, shielding you from the pain of our reality. But in doing so, you created a chasm," Lillian replied, her voice steadier now. "A chasm that almost swallowed us whole. I need to understand why you felt you had to hide the truth from me." Her mother sighed, the breath escaping her lips like a long-held secret. "I was afraid of what it would mean for our family, for you and Ethan. I thought that if I could keep the past buried, we could live in peace. But I see now that peace built on lies is no peace at all." Lillian felt a pang of empathy for her mother, a woman who had fought her own battles, yet had ultimately failed to protect the ones she loved. "I understand your fear, but it's left us in ruins. I want us to rebuild, but we must do it together." Tears glistened in her mother's eyes as she reached out, taking Lillian's hands in her own. "I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused you. I thought I was acting in your best interests, but I see now that I only compounded your suffering." Lillian squeezed her mother's hands, feeling a warmth in the connection that had felt so fragile moments before. "We can't change the past, but we can choose how to move forward. I want to forgive you, but I need honesty between us. No more secrets." Her mother nodded, a glimmer of hope flickering in her gaze. "You're right. I promise to be honest with you from now on. We'll face this together, as mother and daughter should." As they sat in the soft light, Lillian felt a shift within her, a release of the burdens she had carried for too long. The conversation had opened a door, and she sensed the possibility of healing, of rediscovering the bond that had once been so strong. "Mother," Lillian said softly, "there's something else I need to talk about. Ethan." At the mention of his name, her mother's expression shifted, a shadow passing over her features. "What about him?" "I want to see him," Lillian confessed, her heart racing. "I need to talk to him. I want to understand what we can be now." Her mother's brow furrowed, concern etched across her face. "Lillian, I know you care for him deeply, but this is complicated. You both need time to process what has happened." "I understand that," Lillian replied firmly. "But I can't ignore my feelings. I love him, Mother. I can't just turn that off." "I know," her mother said gently, her voice softening. But love is not enough. You both need to navigate this carefully. The world will not be kind to you if you choose to pursue this path. Maybe it doesn't have to be about the world, Lillian countered, her resolve growing stronger. Maybe it can be about us, about what we decide is right for our lives. Her mother regarded her thoughtfully, the weight of their shared history evident in her gaze. You're strong, Lillian, but I worry about the repercussions. You've both been through so much already. I know, Lillian replied, her voice steady. But I believe we can find our way. We can learn to embrace the truth together, no matter how painful it may be. After a long moment of silence, her mother finally nodded, the corners of her mouth lifting into a tentative smile. Then go to him. But promise me you'll approach this with caution. Your heart is too precious to risk. I promise, Lillian said, feeling a surge of gratitude for her mother's support. Thank you for understanding. As she stood to leave, Lillian felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer the girl trapped in the shadows of her mother's decisions. She was stepping into her own light, ready to confront the complexities of her love for Ethan. With each step toward Ethan's home, Lillian felt the past and present intertwining, the weight of her decisions heavier than ever. She was determined to face whatever lay ahead, to embrace the uncertainty with courage. Love, after all, was not merely a feeling, it was a choice, a commitment to navigate the labyrinth of emotions with honesty and grace. When she arrived at Ethan's doorstep, her heart raced with anticipation and trepidation. She knocked, each rap echoing like a heartbeat in the stillness around her. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing Ethan, his expression a mixture of surprise and vulnerability. "Lillian," he breathed, his voice a soft caress against the tension that hung in the air. "I didn't expect to see you." "Can we talk?" she asked, her heart pounding with the weight of what she needed to say. "Of course," he replied, stepping aside to let her in. As she crossed the threshold, Lillian felt the familiar warmth of his home envelop her, a sanctuary she had longed for amid the chaos of her emotions. They settled on the couch, the space between them charged with unspoken words. Lillian took a deep breath, searching for the right way to convey her feelings. "Lindsay, I've been thinking about everything that happened. About us." His eyes locked onto hers, a flicker of hope mingling with uncertainty. "And I want to understand what we can be now," she said, her voice steady. "I love you, Ethan. That hasn't changed, despite everything." He looked away, his brow furrowed in thought. "But can we really move past this, knowing what we know?" "I believe we can," she replied earnestly. "We've faced so much together already. We're stronger than the secrets that have threatened to tear us apart." Ethan's gaze softened as he considered her words. "I want to believe that, but it's hard. The fear of what others will think, of the judgment we'll face, it looms over us." "Let them judge," Lillian said fiercely. "This is our life, our love. We shouldn't let anyone dictate what we can or cannot feel." He met her gaze, a flicker of admiration shining in his eyes. "You're right. I've been so focused on the consequences that I forgot about what truly matters. Us." As the tension began to lift, Lillian felt a warmth spread through her, igniting the embers of hope that had been smoldering since their last encounter. "I don't want to lose you again, Ethan. I want to face this together, no matter how difficult it may be." He reached for her hand, the touch sending a surge of electricity through her veins. "Then let's find a way to navigate this, together." In that moment, the world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them, bound by the choices they were willing to make. Lillian knew the path ahead would not be easy. It would be fraught with challenges and uncertainty. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of clarity, a belief that love, when nurtured with honesty and courage, could flourish even in the most tumultuous of circumstances. As they sat together, hands intertwined, Lillian felt the warmth of a new beginning blossoming between them. They were embarking on a journey not just as lovers, but as partners willing to embrace the complexities of their lives. And, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the room, Lillian knew that they had taken the first step toward healing, toward reconciliation, and ultimately, toward love that could withstand the trials of the past. In the days that followed, Lillian and Ethan navigated their evolving relationship with cautious optimism. They spoke openly about their fears and desires, laying bare the insecurities that had haunted them both. Each conversation drew them closer, allowing them to explore the depths of their connection while acknowledging the challenges that lay ahead. Lillian's heart swelled with gratitude for Ethan's willingness to confront the truth alongside her. They ventured out into the world, hand in hand, facing the whispers and glances of those around them with a shared resolve. They were not defined by their past. Rather, they were forging a new path, one that was uniquely their own. With each passing day, the bond they shared deepened, transforming into a love that was rooted in understanding and acceptance. Lillian felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just for herself, but for the family she hoped to rebuild. She was determined to create a space where honesty reigned, where secrets could no longer fester in the shadows. One evening, as they strolled through the park, the air crisp with the promise of autumn, Lillian turned to Ethan, her heart brimming with emotion. "I want to talk to my mother again," she said, her voice steady. "I want to share everything with her. I want her to know that we're committed to facing this together." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That sounds like a good idea, but are you sure you're ready for that?" "I am," Lillian replied, her determination unwavering. "I want to rebuild that trust. I want her to see that we're not just two people caught in a web of lies. We're two people who love each other and are willing to fight for our happiness." As they walked beneath the canopy of trees, the leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, Lillian felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. She was no longer the girl lost in the shadows of her mother's decisions. She was a woman ready to embrace her own choices, to forge her own path, and to reclaim the narrative that had been shaped by secrets and fear. When she returned home, Lillian found her mother in the kitchen, the aroma of freshly baked bread filling the air. The sight of her mother, busy and content, stirred something deep within Lillian. A longing for connection, for reconciliation, and for healing. "Mother," Lillian called softly, stepping into the warmth of the kitchen, "can we talk?" Her mother turned, surprise flickering across her features. "Of course, dear. Is everything all right?" "I want to talk about Ethan," Lillian said, her heart racing. "I want to tell you how we're moving forward." Her mother's expression shifted, a mixture of concern and curiosity. "All right, I'm listening." Taking a deep breath, Lillian gathered her thoughts, the words flowing like a river of honesty. "Ethan and I have decided to face this together. We're committed to understanding our relationship and navigating the complexities of our situation." Her mother's eyes widened, a flicker of apprehension dancing within their depths. "But Lillian, do you realize what this means? The world will judge you both harshly." "I understand that," Lillian replied, her voice steady. "But I believe our love is worth fighting for. We're not alone in this. We can support each other." Tears glistened in her mother's eyes as she regarded her daughter, the weight of her own choices reflected in Lillian's determination. You're so brave, Lillian. I wish I'd been more honest with you from the beginning. It's never too late to start, Lillian said, her voice filled with warmth. I want us to rebuild our relationship, to create a space where we can be honest with each other. No more secrets, no more fear. Her mother nodded, a smile breaking through the sorrow that had clouded her features. I would like that very much. As they embraced, Lillian felt a sense of peace wash over her, the bond between them strengthening with each passing moment. They were no longer just mother and daughter. They were allies in the journey of healing, ready to face the challenges ahead together. And as the warmth of the kitchen enveloped them, Lillian knew that they had taken the first steps toward a brighter future, one built on love, honesty, and the unwavering belief that they could navigate the complexities of their lives